People quit addictions. I mean, swarms of people quit their addictions every single year. If you know nothing about what addiction is, or you never experienced one, you might think about addiction recovery or movement past it as AA or a Betty Ford kind of a rehab center. By and large, people do this on their own. And that's what we want to talk about today. Not only the fact that people move out of their addictions over time through development of other life circumstances, but there are ways in which if somebody's having trouble, well, we can employ those techniques in order to help people's best thinking move them forward.
Um, Let me do this in 5 easy pieces. Um, how do we know that people quit addictions all the time? Because if you go out to dinner or go to a family gathering, and you're with a bunch of people and you're, more or less stable, family oriented environment, you might say to people, have any of you ever smoked? And, there's going to be a few people who smoked. And then you'll say to them, oh, do you smoke now? And the answer is generally going to be no. If they have a job and they have a family and they have children and they were pregnant. And then if you ask them, or if you think about it, why did they quit? The reasons are going to be so basic. They're going to say things, and I've asked people this, going to say things like, well, I couldn't believe I was doing something so stupid. Or they'll say something like, I got pneumonia and I thought, am I really going to kill myself? Or the number one reason is I got pregnant or my partner got pregnant. And for God's sake, I wasn't going to smoke while I was pregnant, or I wasn't going to smoke in front of children.
Hmm.
So those are actually purposes and values that people have. So that's a first important thing to explore about how and why people quit addictions, and how and why you can quit an addiction by thinking about what's the most important thing in your life to you.
So people can decide, I would rather live this way, and make a decision to give up something that they experience addiction with.
And we're very open minded. People think, well, you're talking about values, how judgmental. If it takes you a while, we don't get down on you. I mean, the fact that people try to quit and fail, that's nothing to us. Um, what's important is that they want to quit or change their lives. And if they want to, sooner or later, a large majority are going to get to that place. And if it takes a little while back and forth, we're good with that. The second point I want to make about how people quit, in general, people have a reason for doing their addiction. They're drinking for some purpose, they imagine. They're smoking for some purpose. They feel better in some short term way, even when they're eating too much or doing other harmful things. And they're getting some gratification from it. When will they quit? They quit when they see there's a better alternative in their life and they believe it. So when they think, if I don't smoke or drink too much, I'll be more attractive to other people, including people, let's say, I'm interested in forming relationships with. And they see and believe that. That's an example of something that's a highly motivating force for them in their lives.
I'm going to ask you a question, like I hate when you do to me. How do you feel about this? Jonathan Haidt wrote a book called The Anxious Generation. And in Jonathan Haidt's book, he talks about social media being ubiquitous among youth, and that being overwhelmingly damaging to their real social lives and connections, and that we need to do away with this technology before a certain age. He also talks about the need for more free play among kids. I think that's a great idea. I'm talking about the social media part. Schools now are mandating, this could be its own podcast, I guess, but schools now are mandating no more cell phone use. So they're just putting forth the no tolerance policy for cell phones, like we did no tolerance policy for bullying. How do you feel that will work? What are your initial thoughts about something like no cell phone policy because social media is bad? I have my thoughts, and I'm just curious to get your
Well,
reaction.
Hyde has done something very important. Uh, he's talked about the ways that people's larger lives coalesce around something that's negative for them. And on the other hand, it worsens their lives. He has an
Hmm.
explanation. He doesn't say, well, people are inherently addicted to cell phones. He says they're living in a world of fear, um, of lack of interaction with people. Think about how the uh, pandemic enhanced that. And so they become less and less engaged with other people. At the same time, that resorting to cell phone as your main companion debilitates you in terms of dealing with other people.
Hmm.
So is that discouraging, Zach? Do you feel that's a discouraging message for
The,
human beings?
well, the message could be discouraging. There are always going to be things that create an ecosystem for people to either thrive in or not, and there are going to be vulnerabilities for people's ability to handle them in balance. So cell phones and social media is one. So I'm not always super discouraged just because there's a thing that makes it hard. My discouragement was the idea that, millions of people are reading Haidt's book and saying, aha, here's what we do. We ban the technology, as though on one hand, people won't be able to access it ever again on their own sneakily, or that actually does something. My point that was supposed to map on to yours is that, what would we do at LPP if somebody came in and said, but I have this, I'm using technology. I like to use it. It gives me some feeling of belonging or connection with people. And also it's ruining my sleep hygiene. I actually think I don't get out. I don't get out and see people anymore. Um, my family is sort of upset with me about things. Things aren't going so well. Now there's a conversation to be had, and I don't think we would say, I don't think our best thought would be, well, just toss your cell phone. We would say, we would ask questions about what it is that a person's getting from that experience and what they really want. So,
Well, we are witnessing a period where there's an overwhelming tide for people to ban phones in schools. How do you feel about that, Zach? You happen to spend a lot of time in schools.
well, that's the thing I don't enjoy. I don't think phones in schools are a particularly good thing. On the other hand, my tendency would be to lean into students thinking about what they get from that technology. So, what your second point that I'm totally disrupting and taking it off the
Go
rail
ahead.
is that when people see a better path in their life, other than the thing that is sort of shrinking their life, well, they'll take the better path. People want to be well, you know? So, I don't think you would get a room full of students. You don't even have to do the pretend collaboration with students and say, tell us why you think cell phones are bad, and then no, you could just say, how do you think social media and cell phones are enhancing or not in your life? And you would get a group of students who would say, well, it's good, everyone's on them. But then on the other hand, you might say, if everybody wasn't on them, I probably wouldn't be. I enjoy doing A, B, and C. And if you can build an environment that people enjoy life more than they enjoy the thing that's in lieu of head facing life head on, I think that would be positive. So the ban is what I don't like, rather than helping people
You
find
and
their
I
own
don't like
way.
to ban things, but remember, you are in a school environment.
Yeah.
You do have a right to say to people, well, why don't you be polite
Yeah.
and listen to, I'm the teacher, um, not be nicking around with your cell phone while we're talking. So people just deposit them. They're doing that now in restaurants and other places because people need an environment that allows them, almost gives them the excuse to be able to exercise other skills and abilities and to see that they can get through them.
I
Uh,
have teacher friends who have developed lessons based on the most current TikTok and Instagram trends because they know that that's on the forefront of their students' minds, and that is something that gets them completely engaged in the lesson because they're the experts on it. And it's totally constructive and it's doing something together. Um, and a cell phone ban wouldn't allow them to do something like that. Not that that's the be all end all. I guess I'm just saying I think we at LPP all the way down, you're right, we're a little bit old school. Like you can't do stuff that's unsafe or harmful to the environment or to other people. We don't condone that. We don't say do anything you want, let it rip, hurt people. But on the other hand, there's there's every quirky little way that you can use the technology, the drug, if that's the case, something like alcohol in a constructive way. And so people can
well, we believe
decide.
that, but we believe in, and I know you believe in rules. I have three children, and my ex-wife, none of them are addicted to cell phones or social media. All of them have careers that involve that.
Hmm.
And my former wife simply forbade anybody from using a cell phone at dinner.
Yeah.
You must do that too, don't you, Zach?
Yeah, we do, no cell phones at dinner for sure.
So that
I don't mean to get into the weeds either about cell phone use. My point being that no matter what the addiction is, if people can find a way to either use it more constructively than an addictive cycle that kind of shrinks their world, or they can find a better style of life than they want for themselves, they can move on from it. Anyway, we could
right,
do the cell phone discussion a
and
different
that's the
time.
goal. And especially in controlling situations like schools and parenthood, people shouldn't feel self-conscious about saying, well, we just have some basic rules. We didn't make these rules up. They're like, why don't you relate to other people?
Right, the age old.
If I'm speaking to you, you listen.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm
Uh,
going to go. We're up to the third point on
let's
the
get
outline
rolling.
now.
Yeah.
People are quit their addictions when they see a path forward for themselves, which is part of a more general facade of feeling confident and hopeful and optimistic. People will quit addictions when they have a positive sense of where their lives are going. Now, you could say the same thing about that we said about they'll quit. You don't have to ban things, but that's a big ticket for a lot of people to have an optimistic view of the world, to feel positive about the world. That takes some doing on their part and on the part of institutions, on the part of families, and the part of schools and society. We don't mean to minimize that, but what we do mean to say is if people can't develop positive feelings about the world around them, and that world is supportive of those positive feelings, you're going to have all kinds of problems. And you're not going to cure. We've had a ton of addiction therapy. The United States spends more money on addiction treatment than all other countries combined. And yet we have the most life years lost to drug and mental health, death, and disability of any country.
Mm.
You have to work to create a universe that is susceptible to encouraging people. Now, people also quit. I said earlier, why do people quit when they get pregnant or their partner gets pregnant? That's the number one reason. People who are in number one way people quit addictions on their own is when they're enmeshed, as the role, engaged with other human beings, often in intimate and family relationships. And so, if there are lonely people in the world and we're isolated, that's a little more than we can tackle in life process program. But what we do tackle is encouraging people to be open to intimacy, to work on intimacy, to seek friendships, and to seek being part of a community.
Mm. So even the work that Life Process Program does in inner cities, where I think that was a little bit of the uh-oh hesitation of that group. We talk about intimacy and social support, and people say, I don't know if there is much intimacy or social support. Actually, what we found is that people can get support in all sorts of ways. It's just a matter of who they'd like to turn to or spend their time with and who they feel is supportive. And when they get that, it's easier to move forward.
We used to learn that people were social animals. It's almost a perversion of humanity that lately people have become so isolated.
Yeah.
It's not hard to get people to enjoy and want to be with other people. It's more like giving them an option. And the best thing that can be said often about AA support groups where they're telling people they have a disease is, well, at least they're getting together with other human beings. And what we would say is, okay, that's good as far as it goes. But how about getting together with other human beings, not just because you share a disease or an addiction, but just because you aspire to some broader output?
So
So the last, go ahead.
that's an AA thing is like with the tricky part is AA you could be social Alcoholics Anonymous for those who need to you can be social just about anywhere. But are you being social? You're being part of a group and reading sort of a doctrine about how you ought to be, and there's some rules you have to follow. And one of the rules is that you need to label yourself a certain way and follow steps in your life. But social, as we see it, is something that's a little bit more that means something in your life that you can put forward and then receive as a social interaction.
And so much of the communication in AA are drunkalogs. You know, people want to
Yeah,
tell all the stories. And clapping at the end is not an interaction, it's not a support thing.
right.
And the last thing, once again, um, people quit when they have purpose, goals, when they have motivation, when they have a larger view of life. Once again, we're talking about how LPP operates within a world with private clients, but also with disadvantaged groups that we don't have the ability to change the world. What we have the ability to do is to identify positive things about people's lives and the characteristics of people who quit addictions and do all we can within the groups we work with or the individuals we work with to allow them to aspire to some purpose in life, to some greater ability to deal with the world, to find some greater pleasure or joy or purpose.
And apropos of our previous podcast where we talked about addiction not being a disease and why it's actually harmful to name it as such, um, the people who it, it's no wonder so many people quit on their own if these are sort of the benchmarks that we recognize as what it takes to move past an addiction or a bulwark against addiction. We know that people quit on their own because of years and years of longitudinal, enormous data and surveys about people saying that, yep, I am in a rut with one drug or activity or another. And then over time, no, I'm not anymore. Heyman has done meta-analyses of some of the American studies, surveys and studies.
Heyman spelled Heyman, Eugene, if you're looking him up.
Gene Heyman, yes. And, all of the things you just mentioned seem to be included among why people overcome addictions. So at the life
And it's
process
on
program.
you and I talk about a developmental approach to addiction.
Right.
It's a natural development. If people's lives are allowed and encouraged to go forward, that they're going to quit addiction. Quitting addiction, we're helping people do what they're inclined to do and that most people will do without that much intervention in their own lives.
As a segue, if we need it, that sounds like the opposite of coercion. It sounds like trying to get from people to articulate their best thinking about what it would look like to live a meaningful, good life. We're going to do a podcast soon about coercive treatment and why that cannot be a reasonable option. But
we're against coercive treatment. We don't coerce anybody. Why don't we call it a day and then think some more about that topic?
All right.